Hi and welcome to another Xamarin tutorial. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make a temperature converter app for iOS, which will be targeted at iPhone devices. Okay, so we've already made this app in Xamarin for Android in another tutorial. This time we're going to make the same app for iPhones, okay, or for iOS devices. So you can see here I've already got a solution here called temperature converter. That's the Android version. I'm now going to make an iPhone version. So I'll click on New Solution and I'll select App underneath iOS and then just Single View App. Okay, so creating a single view app and we're using the C# programming language. So make sure that's C#. Then click on Next and I'm going to call this Temp Converter. And I'm going to so it says select the minimum iOS version you want to support. I'm going to choose iOS 9.1. So you can choose a minimum version of iOS that you want to support and devices that you want to support. I'll allow both iPad and iPhone and click on Next. And then project and solution name I'll leave the same. Make sure I've got a folder that I'll store this project in. It should just be the default project folder. And then click on Create. Okay. Now the project or new solution will open, and this is what you see when you start a new solution for iOS. You'll see appdelegate.cs. We don't actually need this file at the moment, so we can just go ahead and close that. And instead, what we'll be needing is viewcontroller.cs and main.storyboard. So viewcontroller.cs, this is where we'll add the code for our first screen, and main.storyboard, if we double click on that, that's where we can actually design the screen for the app. So go ahead, open up main.storyboard. Okay, and you'll need Xcode installed on your Mac to be able to view this, which I did put in the installation instructions in a previous tutorial. Okay, there we go. So it's now open, it's ready to go. What we need to do is where it says view as, it's cut off here, but it says view as, we need to pick an iPhone. So this will run on any iPhone that you see here, so iPhone 4, 5, 6, 6 Plus, or iPad, but you need to pick a screen that you'll be designing it on, okay? So I'm going to pick the iPhone 6, and then I'm just going to, where it says zoom, I'm going to zoom to fit. There we go. And you can also change the iOS version there as well. Okay, so first thing that we'll do is you need your toolbox over here to drag some design elements on. So if you don't see the toolbox, you can just search for toolbox and then click on it to show the toolbox. And you can also get it from view and then pads and toolbox. Okay. Also, if your solution view over here goes or disappears, so you can no longer see your project files, you can also go to view, pads, and then solution to bring that pane back. Okay, but what we need to do is we need to drag on some design elements. So we need firstly some text that will tell the user to enter the temperature in degrees. We need that on the screen at the top. So we can just scroll down until we see the label element. We can drag a label on and just kind of try to align it to the middle of the screen there. Okay, so we've got a label. Now what we need to do is give this some text. So we can go to the properties panel on the widgets tab, scroll down until we see text property, and change it from saying label to saying enter temperature in degrees. Okay, so the user is going to enter temperature in degrees as either Celsius or format, and then they'll tap a button that will convert to either Fahrenheit or Celsius. Okay, so that's the text now. We can resize it by just clicking and dragging the edges there, or the corners, and there we go. Could also change the color of the text, the font size. We could make it a little bit bigger. It's up to you. Okay, I'll just leave it as is though, and you can align that text as well. All right, there we go. So we have our label there. That's just giving some instructions to the user on what they need to do. Okay. Now what we need to do is we need to find a text field element. We'll scroll down, we see text field, and this is where the user will type in their actual temperature value in this text field. So we can go ahead and resize that as well, give them a bit of room to type in. They shouldn't be typing in huge numbers, but just a little bit bigger there. And also so that we can see the default text that will, or the placeholder text that will display there. So we can go and where it says text, the value here for text, we can get rid of that. And then we can click in placeholder text and we can change that to temperature in degrees or something like that. So they just know what they're typing in there. Okay, and it's kind of gray, just a placeholder text. As soon as the user taps or clicks in that box, that text will go away and they can start typing in a number. Okay, so that's basically what we need to start with. We also need some buttons, and then we need to go and name these elements. So before we do that, we'll add the buttons now. So we need 2 buttons. We can drag one on here, and then another button down here. Try and align everything. Okay, the buttons, this one, I'll click on it, and the text, here we go, or title. Let's check that, yeah. Title, instead of saying button, it will say convert to Celsius. There we go. Okay, we can resize that. And we can align it as well. Oh, it's already aligned, so we don't need to worry about that. Buttons will automatically align to center. Okay, and then this one will say convert to Fahrenheit. And we just need to make that a bit wider. Maybe just move it that way a little bit. There we go. So we've got convert to Celsius and convert to Fahrenheit. All right, last thing we need to do now is we need another label. So we can drag a label on, and this label will display the result. So we can go and resize this because the result could be quite large. It could be a big number. So we'll make plenty of room there for different numbers, and we'll also make plenty of room there because we'll make the text a larger font. We'll align it to the center, and we'll change the font to something bigger. It's probably big enough. We can even make it a bit bigger if we think that's needed. And then instead of saying label, the default text will just say 0. Okay, so before they actually convert a temperature value, it will just say 0 to start off with. All right, now let's go back up to this text field. And let's give it a name. So where you see name, I'm going to call this one temp text field. Okay, so temp lowercase t, and then text with uppercase T, and field with an uppercase F. So temp text field, all one word. Don't use spaces or anything like that. The convert to Celsius button I'll call C button, lowercase c, uppercase B. And in the same format for Fahrenheit, we'll have F button. Okay. And then for the result text label, we'll call that result label. Just like that. And we can go ahead and save that. So file and save, or Command S. Okay. That's it. So that's pretty much the design for the app. That's the screen. That's what it's going to look like. Pretty simple at the moment, but that will do because it's a simple app. So making sure that that's saved, we can go over to viewcontroller.cs. All right. And what we need to do is we need to add a touch event, so that basically a method or a section of code will run when a touch event occurs. So when these buttons are touched or tapped by the user. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll create a touch event for the Celsius button. We'll start with that first. So we can just go inside the view did load method. So we've got public override void view did load, and then we've got base view did load here. Just underneath there, we can go and start adding our code. So we'll start with the Celsius button, or convert to Celsius button, which was called C button. And as soon as we start typing it, we can already see it's coming up there as an option. We can just complete that. And we're going to say C button dot touch up inside. Okay, so this is a touch event which will occur when this button is touched by the user. So inside the button, the user will touch the button or tap the button, and this event will occur. So touch up inside plus equals, hit space, and then you'll get some options here. We want to create a method, so you see an M there for method, C button underscore touch up inside. We want to create this method, so double click on that, and there you go, it completes that sentence or that line for you, and then adds this new method here where we can add the code that will run when the Celsius or convert to Celsius button is tapped. Okay, but before we go and program that, what we'll do is we'll go and add another line for the convert to Fahrenheit button. So, F button dot touch up inside plus equals, hit space, and then scroll down until you see F button touch up inside, double click that, and now we've got a section of code, a method here to write the code for the convert to Fahrenheit button and code for the convert to Celsius button. Okay, now because we've got convert to Fahrenheit button event method here, what we'll do is we'll just start programming that one first. So we'll start with the Fahrenheit, and then we'll go to Celsius. Okay, what we need to do is we need to actually get the temperature value from this text field here. We need to go and grab the value that the user types in. So we can go and type float, because this value is, it needs to be stored as a float, all right, because we're converting from one unit to another, one type of temperature to another, and the result is potentially going to be, it's potentially going to have a decimal place, all right, so it's probably not going to be a whole number, all right, and the temperature that the user types in themselves might not be a whole number. So for example, the user might type in 20.5 degrees in Celsius, and then they want to convert that to Fahrenheit. Okay, so it needs to be a float, can't be an integer. When we say float temp, which will stand for temperature, equals float dot pass temp text field, so we can complete that line there, dot text, and then close that bracket and end that line with a semicolon. So what we're saying here is we're creating a new variable called temp, which is short for temperature, and we're grabbing the text from the temp text field, which is this. So this is called, remember we gave it the name temp text field. So we're grabbing the text that is typed in there by the user, we're grabbing that text value, we're converting it to a float data type, and then we're storing it in a float variable called temp. Okay, what we'll do now is we'll create a variable which will actually have the conversion formula in it. So float F result, where F stands for Fahrenheit, and the formula that we'll use is we'll take the temperature, if it's, so the user, if they're entering the temperature in as Celsius and they want to convert to Fahrenheit, then we should have the temperature as Celsius, so temp multiplied by 1.8, and then we add 32. We can't just type 1.8 though, we need to add an F on the end there to say that this is a float, and then plus 32 and an F. So F stands for float there. All right, if you don't put F's there at the end of those numbers, you will get an error. Okay, probably saying can't convert to float implicitly or something like that. So just make sure that you put Fs there at the end of those numbers. Now what we can do is we can, once we have got the temperature value, once we work out what that temperature is in Fahrenheit, and convert it and store it in this variable called fresult, with it, we can then go and display that result here on the result label right there. Okay, so we can go and say result label, so we can access that label. Oops, dot text equals f result. So take that result variable dot to strings, and we're now converting it to a string. All right. So what happens is when the user types something in the temp text field, it's a string. All right. Whatever they type in that text box is a string. We convert it to a float, and then we store it in a float variable called temp, so that we can then go and run this formula and get the result. But now that it's being displayed back on the screen on the result label as text, we need to convert it back to a string again. So we say result label.text equals fresult.toString. All right, and that will convert this back to a string. And we could just do that and end it. We could just end this line with a semicolon, just like that. However, what we'll do is we don't want to just display the value on its own. What we can do is go and add this string so that the user can actually see the result, and then at the end of that result there's a space, and then it will say degrees Fahrenheit. So for example, if the user types in 20 and it's in Celsius, and they tap the button that says convert to Fahrenheit, then it should say 68 degrees Fahrenheit, as an example. Right, now we've done that, we just go and do exactly the same kind of thing here for the convert to Celsius button, except we're just using a different formula to convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius. So again, we'll say float temp equals float.pass temp text field dot text, just like that. And this time we'll create a variable called C result, where C stands for Celsius. I'll say float C result equals, in brackets, temp minus 32F. So this is the formula for converting from Fahrenheit to Celsius. We want to take the Celsius temperature value minus 32, and then the result of that will be divided by 1.8. Remember to put an F there for float. Okay. All right. If we didn't put brackets here, what would happen is we would have temperature minus 32 divided by 1.8. So we would get the wrong result. What we want to do is take 32 off temperature and then divide all of that by 1.8. So it's important to think about order of operations and to use brackets where they're necessary, like they are here. Okay, now we'll get the result label. We'll change its text to say C result. So the result from converting to Celsius. Convert that to a string. And then we shall say space and then degrees Celsius. Just like that. Okay. Now we can go and save this, save the code. We're pretty much done there. All that we need to do now really is there's a couple of other things that we can do to the code, but what we'll do is go back to the main storyboard here. All right, and we'll go and select this text field element, which is called temp text field. And in the properties panel, make sure we're on the widget tab. We'll scroll down until we see keyboard type, and we'll change that from default. Okay, so click on that box there. And instead of having default, what we want to do is change this to decimal pad. Okay, if we just leave it as default, the user will see the default keyboard, which contains, it's just your QWERTY keyboard that contains all of your letters, all of your numbers, all the different characters, okay? But we don't want to allow the user to type in letters or other random characters into this text box because we can't convert those things to Celsius or Fahrenheit. We only want them to be able to type in numbers. Now, we could use NumberPad, but NumberPad would not give us the decimal point. Okay, so remember, we're not always working with whole numbers. So we need to choose decimal pad, which will allow the user to type in numbers and the decimal point as well. All right, so that would display the most suitable keypad for what we're doing in this app. And we can just save that again. Command S to save, or File, Save. The last step before testing the app, so we'll do that in just a moment. The last step before testing the app involves adding a little piece of code that will allow the keypad to be dismissed by the user when it's no longer needed. So the problem with this app at the moment is when the keyboard comes up, the user might tap the different numbers on the keypad to type in a number and then convert it, but the keypad will be stuck there and we can't get rid of it. So what we'll do is we'll go back to viewcontroller.cs after saving that file, and we're going to add some code to override something that's already there. Okay, so let's just have a look here. Okay, here we go. So scroll down the bottom here. We've got public override void did receive memory warning. Okay, so we've got this method here. We want to go to the end of that method. So after this curly bracket here, and we want to hit return or enter to make some space and type override, override with two R's in there, override, and then touches began. Okay. As you start typing override touches began, you should see an autocomplete suggestion called touches begin, and then endset touches UI event event. Okay, so you should see that. Press the enter or return key on the keyboard to autocomplete this. All right, so just hit enter or return on your keyboard, and that will create a new override method called touches began. All right, so we've got here a new override method called touches began. Okay, and inside of the method we'll add some code to dismiss the keyboard. So inside this method we have base.touches began and then touches event. We can just make a new line there and write this dot view, capital V, dot end editing, and then in brackets true. Whoops, close that bracket and end that line with a semicolon, and that's it. We can just save that file now. And what this will do is it will override what's already programmed here. It will override the keyboard and allow us to end editing or dismiss the keyboard. Okay, so that's it. Make sure everything's saved, and we can now go and test this. Make sure you've picked the type of iPhone in the iOS simulator that you want to simulate this app on. I'm using iPhone 6s iOS version 9.3, so I can just click on the little build or run icon and just wait for the iPhone simulator to load. Here it is. All right, here's the app loading now. So it's just building the app, and here it is. Okay, so we see the text here, enter temperature in degrees. We've got two buttons, convert to Celsius, convert to Fahrenheit, and then we've got the result label. So let's type in firstly a temperature in Fahrenheit. So click in there. Now, for some reason on the actual iPhone simulator, sometimes you won't see the keypad actually appear. So the keypad isn't appearing here for some reason, but I think that's just an issue with the iPhone simulator. It's not an issue with our code. So I've noticed it many times before that the keypad won't appear. When you actually run this app on a phone, the keypad should appear. So we can just type in a value here. So Notice when there's nothing there, it says temperature in degrees. As soon as we start typing, that value placeholder text goes away. We can then click on convert to Fahrenheit and, oh, whoops, no, convert to Celsius. So this is 68 degrees Fahrenheit. We want to convert to Celsius. So there we go. We get 20 degrees Celsius, which is accurate. Okay, and if we go 20, so 20 degrees Celsius, when we want to convert that to Fahrenheit, we can then click on convert to Fahrenheit, and that's 68 degrees Fahrenheit. So that works, and it gives the correct result. So basically, the user types in the value that they're converting from. So for example, 50.5. So they're typing in what they're converting from, and then they tap the button of what they want to convert to. So if this is 50.5 degrees Fahrenheit, we want to convert to Celsius, we can just tap convert to Celsius, and then we get a result there. So 10.2778 degrees Celsius. Now, we could go and modify this code a little bit. We can improve the app by maybe limiting how many characters the user can type in. So maybe not allowing them to convert very, very, very large values. And also just limiting the number of decimal places here. So we don't really need a temperature value that long. So maybe we could just round this up to 10.3 or 10.28 degrees or something like that. Okay, so that's basically it. The app is working. This is what it should look like after you've finished this tutorial. So have a go at improving the app and maybe adding some different features and some more information, maybe adding image buttons instead of just plain text buttons. But that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching.